Hello, and welcome to the Alchemists Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
And I am KristaLyn. And we
We're
actually
both
have a really cool episode for today, I think. I'm
I
excited
think so
about it.
too. I do too. I think we're both really at the edge of our thresholds at this point in time with all of the stuff that we've had going on. And I think this is a fun episode to talk about where it's gonna be
Yeah.
easy and flowy, and I don't know. I think we're gonna dig it.
I love that phrase, at the edge of our thresholds. I'm going to
Mhm.
use that. Like, excuse me, I'm just at the end of my threshold right now. I need a moment. That's perfect.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I use that quite often.
And there are a lot of people who are at the end of their thresholds right now. Things are busy in life, but of course, reflecting in the sky and the transits and what's going on. This week isn't so like prominent with like transits or stations or whatever. Next week's got a couple. Actually, next week's gonna be really interesting in a cool way. Just so you know, there's a really cool thing happening next week, as well as the beginning of eclipse season, I believe. Yep. And Scorpio season. So we're having a little calm before the busy. And I don't want to call it a storm because I don't want people to freak out.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a calm. There's like, Venus and the sun are moving in tandem through Libra right now. So most of what we're experiencing over the next week, and I will be posting skits about it all on my TikTok and Instagram, is just Venus will trine Saturn as the sun just did. What this means is that Saturn is now stationary. Saturn is getting ready to move direct again, and we'll do that by the end of the month. I believe it's the 23rd. So another thing to look forward to. I think it's the 23rd. Yeah. I'm just going to double check that because I know a lot of people experiencing Saturn return right now who might want to know exactly what day we can look forward to this. It's the same day as the eclipse, isn't it? Hang on a second.
No, you're good. I think everyone would enjoy knowing what's going on with that.
It's caught up in one of the big moves of this month. I just have to see which one it is. And my eyes are failing at doing any of that right now for me. So what we're experiencing is this stillness before we know big stuff is moving. And that's always an interesting thing to feel, because something's coming and you're kind of preparing for it. And then it's still, you can't like anticipate it as much. But yeah, it is on the 23rd. As we move into Scorpio season, Saturn will station direct as well. So that's nice. And then Saturn and Pluto at this point already has stationed direct. So they're both cruising towards their next signs, which they will ingress into both in March, along with Mars by that point will be ingressing as well. So next March should be hopping.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm excited for some hopping energy. I feel like everything is really busy, but it's also been I don't want to call it hard. I just want to call it heavy, I guess.
Both Saturnian words.
Yeah. Well, because I don't want to say it's all been hard, because it hasn't all been hard. It's all been really good, but a lot of it has been really, I mean, it's not all been really good, but you get what I'm saying. Like a lot of it has been decently heavy energy to hold, even if it is something that is like happy or joyous. You're like, oh, there's this happy, joyous thing, but there's facets of it that make it so heavy that even though it's happy and joyous, it's just being really heavy. I mean, that's the only word I have for it. I think you know what I mean. Hopefully everyone who's listening knows what I mean on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, that was still a really good thing, or that was a cool thing, or I still feel joy about that thing, but it's just extra heavy energy. And I think that's what's bogging us down considerably at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of both and happening right now, where this is the greatest thing, truly, in the last week, one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. And it's setting me up for something that I have always wanted to be able to do. And I'm so eternally grateful and excited. But then other things that are probably some of the most challenging and scariest things happened within days of that. So you kind of say, like, which one of these feelings am I trying to put my energy into? And I know that the eternal optimists might say, oh, put it into the excitement. I want to just acknowledge for everybody that you have to have both. If you have both trays of your Libra scale full, you have to have the balance between them. Otherwise, one goes one way too far and the other goes the other way too far. So it is interesting that we're experiencing this during Libra season, while Libra is combust the sun for most of the time until they Cazimi next week, and then combust again. And then they travel into Scorpio together. So Venus didn't really get to speak her piece during Libra season. so much, but we do get the Kazemi, which is lovely. And we'll get to experience that next week as well. I'm actually going to be speaking at another conference during that called KazemiCon on Twitter. So it'll be nice to really indulge in that moment with all the people there.
Yeah, that'll be really nice. Yeah, I was really looking forward to Libra getting the speaker piece and that she hasn't got to it. I'm like, damn it. Come on.
Yeah.
I wanted that. It's just not happening, but it's fine. So anyway, this episode, we are going to chat about in our Patreon, which you can join our Patreon. If you would like to become a patron, pretty please check it out. It is under the description of this video on YouTube, or it is in our show notes on any other platform that you're listening this to. We would love to have you on there. There's many tiers and many ways to participate in that. But we got a vote for mediumship. Basically, all of our top tier patrons, I think our second and third tier patrons voted for mediumship on this episode, which is kind of fun because it is spooky season. So I think mediumship is a fun topic to kind of touch on.
I agree.
Yeah, right. And with the reason mediumship is kind of fun is during spooking season is not just because people immediately associate it with ghosts. A lot of times, a lot of mediums or a lot of people who work with ghosts call themselves mediums. I personally don't, but
yeah, there's a subtle difference.
I think there's a difference, but that's, yeah. But also because the veil is thinning as per Samhain, like that is what happens. And that is the connection to channeling in past loved ones and ancestors, etc. And that's more of what, in my opinion, mediumship is. I think it's ghost communication when you're talking with ghosts. I don't think it's the same because I think it comes from a different place, in my personal opinion. I know other people disagree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually, from experience, have the same perspective as you're explaining. You know, mediumship to me is more of picking up the phone and calling someone and getting their stuff, and then working with spirits is more of we're kind of in the same room. And you happen to be here and I'm in your space and we're communicating. It's a more present kind of feeling typically. Like I don't go out looking for a spirit. I usually end up in a place where we happen to be coinciding or, you know, coexisting. With mediumship. It's, hey, this person, is there anything that you can provide that would help this person? And, you know, can I dial in on that?
Yeah. And I would say sometimes with ghosts too, you can still like remote view and work with them. Like you can go, you don't have to be physically in the same room, but with mediumship, it's very much like, okay, let's get on the phone and talk. I do want to put this caveat. Mediumship is not talking to your spirit guides. And the reason I say that distinctly is because when you're talking with your spirit guides, you're talking with beings that have a contract to help you. You're talking with beings that have your best interest in mind, that are there to help you, that are there to move you forward. When you're doing mediumship, you are talking to everyone that does not have an obligation to you at all. So they could have opinions that you might not like. They could have thoughts that go against what your highest and best is. Like, I feel like there's sometimes like rose-colored glasses that people put on to be like, oh, they're past loved ones, you know, they're only going to tell me to do good things, when really it's like, well, did they only tell you to do good things in life? Like it's the same sort of deal. Or not even past loved ones, or just past, you know, people who have passed away, that sort of energy. And so I always just want to throw that caveat in to make sure that no one goes in with this, like, I'm thinking of like that it's going to be completely perfect sound advice 100% of the time, when it's very much not.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because I've had a lot of encounters. There was a phase in my life where mediumship readings over the phone, but also gallery readings, that I would go to people's houses and it would be like this potluck, plus there's a medium there. And a lot of the situations where people are connecting, either they have a question and I get to ask the question and I hear what this person who has already passed over has to say. And it doesn't always match up with what I believe. And it's not always of the same emotion as what I would like to convey to someone else. And sometimes, like, you know me, I try to avoid, not for any kind of judgment on anybody else, but like my word choice doesn't often involve profanities. And sometimes it has to, because I'm trying to convey a message from someone else. And that's really funny. But also I've had my mind opened up a lot by doing things where people want to communicate with someone. In a case that's coming up in my mind is someone who chose to cross over voluntarily, to put it lightly. And I had to ask them from a position where I was, again, they changed my mind on something. So I had a different mindset, not too far, like one that was open, but definitely didn't understand it to this level. They had me experience what it's like, the almost dis-ease of addiction and all of those things, and depression. And when you can actually relate and feel and be able to translate that, it will change your perspective. And so that's another reason why it's important to go in not attached to an outcome, with protections. And it's important outside of a mediumship reading to know what you believe and know what's important to you, so you can stay grounded and differentiate when someone's giving you something, rather than this must be what I believe too. Because that can
yeah, it can be super. I love that you just said not attached to the outcome, because that is my biggest issue with mediumship stuff. That's why I don't call myself a medium, even though I talk to past loved ones and can channel in ancestors and whatever all the time, do it all the time. But I don't call myself that, because what it does is oftentimes people will come to a mediumship reading and they want one specific phrase from their past loved one, or they want one, they want to know what outfit they're wearing. And it has to be this, like, they have this deep attachment to, like, almost, it's not quite prove to me you're talking to them. It's a little bit more like prove to me that they are actually doing the thing they said they were going to do, or something in that space. And I cannot stand that. It's not healthy for anyone involved. It's not healthy for the spirit. It's not healthy for the medium, and it's not healthy for the client. Like, it's, none of it is healthy, because it's not, you're never going to be satisfied. Even if the spirit does say the exact phrase you want, it won't be as satisfying as an experience as you think it's going to be, because that's the only thing you wanted out of it. And then there's nothing that you're like, oh, right. I'm sorry, like whack my microphone. Oh, right. What do I want now? Like, why am I here doing this? And that happens a lot. Like, when I do turn in my, readings, I do tune in and do, mediumship style stuff for people upon request. So it's not something I'm like, would you like to talk to an ancestor? If by some chance someone's grandma is incredibly strong and gets past my walls to, like, let me know that they would like to talk, I will bring it up, which is very rare. Or if the client's like, hey, can you talk to past loved ones? I have this person I'd like to talk to, then I'll open up that part of myself and bring them in. But purely for that reason. And oftentimes when I do, the client won't have questions for them. It's just like, oh, I just kind of wanted to know that they're there. And at the end of the day, yeah, of course they're there. I do want to just touch on this, and I've brought this up before. I don't know if I brought it up on the podcast, but I definitely have done videos on it. When a soul passes, they go to what I call a spiritual spa day. Other people call it other things. That's what I call it. And that can be a matter of days. It can be a matter of years, and anything in between, where basically they do kind of disconnect from the physical realm. They're probably not coming through to talk to mediums, or if they are, it's more like, I am here, and then they're gone. And basically it's just their healing process from being human. It's their relearning all the stuff that their soul knows. It's reconnecting with their higher self. It's all these other things. Maybe reading over the plans for next life. Who knows what they're doing, but it is their time to kind of like decompress, basically, from having to be in a physical incarnation. And so I just always want people to keep that in mind. If you had a loved one that usually they stick around for a couple days. Under the Whispering Door, the book does this really well of like illustrating this, is they hang out in the physical plane for a couple days, which is why a lot of times people will get signs from them at a funeral, or they'll get, within the next couple, a dog will come up, or, something like that right after they pass. And then they go and then they go to the spiritual spa day, and people will always come and be like, they died a couple months ago and I haven't heard from them and I feel so disconnected. And I'm like, yeah, like, you haven't heard from them because you don't need to hear from them yet. They're decompressing. They'll come when they're ready. So sometimes if you go to a medium right after a loved one has passed and they can't get them, it's because that's where they are. So I just want to highlight that, because that has been a source of frustration and disappointment for people before. And I don't want anyone to fall into that trap of thinking like, oh, they just don't want to talk to me. That's not it at all. At all.
I've actually written about that in Strayed, which is one of the prequel novellas for the Shifted series. And every person, when they go through that process, handles it differently. My main character doesn't enjoy that process for where they're at in their own journey, spiritual journey. But yeah, it is important, especially
the reason we giggle is her main character is a spirit guide.
She is. Yeah. But also she's dead at that point. So spiritual journey, progressive, whatever. I think it's really important, if you're someone who's thinking about mediumship readings, or if you're not now, in the future, you think about it because of whatever comes up in your life. It's important to know the function of a mediumship reading or of consulting a medium. I believe should not be to continue a conversation or a relationship as though that person is not gone. That's something I actually, when I notice it, I will not continue working for that person, because it can be about closure. It can be like checking in, but anything that prevents you from continuing your life and moving forward, to me, that is me contributing to something that when I was participating in the Modern Mystery School for a while, they defined evil in a way that I actually thought was neat. It's anything that prevents someone from progressing in their life path.
Oh, right. I like that too.
It was one of my things that I was like, I might hold on to this. And I will not be someone who consciously or with awareness incurs that sense of quote unquote evil into someone else's life. If I feel I am enabling you to stay put, or if I am inhibiting you from your life progress in any way, I will remove myself from that equation, because I don't want to be the person who does that to another person. That's why when I do readings, whether they're intuitive, psychic, medium, or astrology, which I'm starting to prefer the term consultation, because reading is it's kind of outlived its usefulness in a sense. It's been said too much.
So funny. I literally had that thought on Saturday of like, ooh, I'm going to change it from soul reading to soul consultation.
Yeah.
I think that's what or guide consultation or something like that. I think I'm going to go that direction. It's so weird that you said the same thing. I mean, it's not weird.
Reasons. But I think it's because enough people accept the spiritual world existence now that we don't have to call it readings and make it seem so esoteric that you're coming out of this fascination. It's more, and I've noticed this too. Like when I first started, I was 19. So I've been doing professional readings and stuff for like almost 15 years. I
get it. I was crazy? 20. So cheers.
Yeah. Here's to us getting older. Right? But when
I first started reading, though, I charged a coffee. I don't know what you charged for that.
I was in the church. I couldn't charge anything.
Right.
So, but what it became, where was I on this? Back then people would show up and I'd say, so what are you looking to have help with? And they'd be like, well, you tell me. Okay. Except you just shut yourself down. So even if I could, because you're having an attitude, I don't want to. It took me a long time to get to that place of being like, no, this is about you. It's not about you testing me. And I know, Emily, you have a lot of opinions on people testing people too. I do feel like in general, that is becoming a less of an issue. It's still there. And there's a difference between curiosity and meanness. You can be curious and you can want to approach something skeptically or with a mind of skepticism so that you can feel like you can trust what comes through. I totally do that. Like, that's why I record things. And that's why when I start a cold read, so to speak, I like to go with like 3 things I shouldn't know. So I'll just lead in on that to make sure for you feel confident that everything I say after this is real and you can use it to progress in your life. And for me, I get to know that I'm on the right wavelength. Yeah. That's all I need. I'm like, I connected before we jumped on the call. Here's what came up. Does that make sense? If not, let me recalibrate. And if so, let's move forward. It's not about the fascination as much anymore, which I'm so grateful for. So to everyone who is among the group of like, I'm doing this to be able to progress in life, I see you and we enjoy working with you.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that you highlight that too. I think a lot of people are moving past to like, well, you tell me. And also I think our hourly rates have gone up to the point of like, not attracting those people, which is great. That is the biggest filter, honestly, in that way. But what I will say is there is a way, if you come and you're like, I actually don't really have any questions, I just wanted to see what would come up, that's fine. Like, we always prefer questions because then we know we're tuning into stuff you want versus tuning into stuff your spirit guides have decided are important. And that can sometimes really go to places that you don't expect. And instead of you being like, actually, these areas are mattering to me at this point. So I always encourage you have at least, if not a question, have areas of interest that you want to bring to any reading you ever do. And that can be including like, I would like to speak to a past loved one, whatever, like that would be an area of interest. But if you don't have that, or if you want to start just being like, I want to know what comes up, that's fine. There's a big difference between that and be like, well, you tell me, what do you sense about me? Like there's a very distinct energy shift there. And I'm in the same boat as you, Krista. When someone goes, well, you tell me, I'm like, no,
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to do that.
Have to.
I'd be like, okay. And a couple of times I have been like, all right, guys, tell me something that is their deepest personal, like super huge thing because they wanted to do this, that they need to shift and change, which is like a block we can pull, but they're never open to that because we like go right to the core of their being and cut right there. And you can immediately see their expression change and then they don't want to talk to you anymore.
Bummer.
Yeah. But anyway, so with mediumship stuff, though, if you do want to tune into a particular loved one, or if you want to see if any loved ones are around, please ask for that. A lot of psychics, myself included, I don't like just opening my mediumship room and being like, who's out there? Come on in. Because I'll get like the neighbor's uncle or like the ghost that lives like 3 houses down. Like I'll get
or
all
someone
of this
for your friend who's outside.
Oh, 100%.
You get piggybacks all the time.
Oh, it happens all the time. So I'm always like, who do you want me to ask if they're there? Now, sometimes that person will come in. Sometimes they'll send a messenger. Sometimes they'll bring in other relatives with them. Like it's entirely up to them. They're their own souls. We're just trying to chat with them. So I always keep that in mind, that just because you ask them to come through doesn't mean they're going to. It really, really doesn't. Which is quite fun when that comes in. Medium reads are particularly fun. I really like doing medium reads a lot of the time because it's just getting to talk to more people and I enjoy that. Have you ever had like any experience that stands out to you? It's like a notable or cool experience from mediumship stuff specifically?
Yes, I have 2. One is fun. Actually, I'm going to do 2 mini ones that are fun. And then one that was a learning experience for everyone involved. So the one that was a learning experience was this person came to me asking her mom about this family secret. And she was like, you have to tell me what the family secret is. You have to tell me. I think it was like some kind of, did this person have an illegitimate child? Is there an illegitimate child? And the mother came through and she was like, don't ask me that. I'm not going to tell you. And the client was like, but I need to know. Make her tell me. I'm like, I'm getting a no. I'm respecting that. Like this is, I'm a, an intuitive, not a family therapist. Like that was a thing. So they said like, I had all sorts of data that supported that we had the right person that I was talking to, but she basically said, stop looking for this. Just stop, respect what I want you to do and stop looking for it. And so that was a really interesting conversation to have to carry, right? Because especially as the person who's channeling, you want to give something of value to these people that come to you, especially a decade ago. You want that because a lot of people would be like, well, I didn't get what I was looking for. What are you going to do to compensate me? And it's like, I can't do anything. I didn't have anything tangible to start with. But fun things was back when, again, it was the suburbs outside of Philly. I was very popular for like a solid year. People would have me go down there and I would drive down there and they would throw little Tupperware parties and I would be the medium doing a gallery reading. And on one occasion, this one's really cool. The woman was brilliant. She was wonderful. And her husband came through and I looked at the clock and I was like, what's with the clock? And she was like, oh, that's his clock. It stopped like 6 weeks ago or whatever, right around the time he passed, or it wasn't 6 weeks ago, but some arbitrary amount of time. And then the clock went off. And it was so cool. And I was just like, he's just, he's obviously still with you. I think there was a thing that he had me say about loving her or something like that. It was just a super sweet moment. And then the clock went off and she's like, that shouldn't be able to go off. It's like, not even, it doesn't work, which was really cool validation for me, as well as everyone else in the room. And then there was another one, it was a bridesmaids party. Get a medium for your bridesmaids party, which was really cool. But we're sitting there and all of a sudden I was like, why? It was her grandmother. Why am I looking at the kitchen? And she's like, oh, I try to cook like my grandmother. And I was like, you're not good at it. All I smell is burned food and like burned baked goods. And her friends started cackling because she apparently is not very good at it or wasn't at the time. So that was another one where you get to kind of convey something that you would think if she's trying to bake to be like your grandma, that's really sweet and nostalgic and everything. Yeah. So it's like, I expected her to be good at it if that's her way of connecting. And apparently she's not very good at it. And her grandma was like, you can do another hobby. It's okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. How about you?
I love that. Yeah. Oh man, I've had a bunch. One was really funny she came in to the space, and this was kind of early on for me. So I was just kind of almost feeling it out of like, how well can I do this mediumship stuff, whatever. And I invite this woman in, and I didn't know who she was. I just know that she was like knocking on my mediumship door, like actively. And I was like, all right, I think this woman has a connection to you. Like, I'm going to let her in. And she has the thickest Russian accent I've ever freaking heard. And it was so hard to understand her. I was like, what are you even talking about? And she's like yelling at me, tell her about the Russian nesting dolls. Tell her the dolls that go in each other. Tell her about it. And I was like, okay. Like, and I was like, something about Russian nesting dolls. And the girl breaks down crying, and they're like right next to her on the shelf. And she's like, these are what they are. And I was like, please tell me your grandmother's Russian, because like I can barely understand her. She totally was. They were really, really close. It was her grandmother who raised her. She didn't even like, wasn't even planning on talking to her, all of that, which was just really validating that early on to be like, okay, cool, cool, cool. And she wouldn't tell me like, oh, I'm her grandma, and this. It was just like she came in and yelled about Russian nesting dolls, and that was what I got. And then once the daughter, the granddaughter was like, that's my grandma, blah 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 blah. I was like, why didn't you like say, hey, I'm your grandma? Like, she's like, yeah, it's fine. It's just like it was fine this way. I was just like, oh, okay. It was, yeah, she was really intense. I really enjoyed speaking with her though. One time, this one is less. It's less like, whoa, and more like, oh. But basically what happened is this, she asked if she was like, can I talk to my son? And I was like, totally. Call him in. He's just joyous, like so fun, so happy. He's wearing yellow, like just really, really stoked on life in general. And I was talking to him, and he was like, here, my mom's gonna get a kick out of this. And I was like, okay. And he immediately like showed me he was flying like very intensely and very fast, and he was whooping it up. And then he like looked back over his shoulder, and then everything went black. And I was like, well, that's weird. I was like, well, what was that? And I told her, and he had died in a hang gliding incident. And I was like, oh, and I was like, he said you get a kick out of it. She's like, I thought he was going to be terrified staring at this, like the thing that he hit, I guess, but he wasn't looking at it. He had looked back over his shoulder, so he didn't know. And so he just thought he was flying. And so she did get a kick out of it. She's like, of course he didn't even realize when he was dying. That makes perfect sense. But it was really like, whoa, for me, which was really interesting. Those are two that stand out really distinctly. There's been a lot though. Like I've talked to a lot of really interesting people. I don't know if you do this too, but like sometimes they're like, I don't know what I want to ask. So I'll be like, do you have a house up there? What do you do with your time? Like you just start like asking the spirits like random questions, because I don't know, I'm intrigued. I don't want to know what they're doing. And they usually like look at me weird and like don't really answer very well, but I want to know. So I always like kind of go into that space. Which is super duper funny. I've also had people come in, and this is always not super great, but past ones come in and be like, hey, please tell them that, their dad is going to go pretty soon, and that we'll be there to help, and blah, blah, blah. And that's always the ones that are like really hard, but I always relay the message. Just they're hard because I never want to like, I'm just saying, hey, this person is saying this. I'm not tuning into this. This is not something that I'm predicting. This is just what this person is saying.
Yeah.
And I always specify that really clearly,
Yeah. Because you don't want to be the one. I always, when I'm looking at a chart or when I'm picking up on something, occasionally you're just like, so how's your dad doing? And you can just see be like, why? Like, no. Or, sometimes it is. And it's just like finding the delicate way to actually broach that conversation. This is why I think in the astrology atmosphere, this is already happening. And I think it's really great. A lot of the different certification tracks or training tracks in the astrological community require consulting skills as, a way to get their acknowledgements. And I think of course, I think you are too, am a certified spiritual life and health coach. So I got consulting skills. Just life coach. Yeah. I got consulting skills for those different demographics and like how to talk delicately, but proactively about those different topics, because you are really taking someone's mindset and sometimes even their mental health into your hands for that, however long the reading is, because something you say can make or break decisions that come later on that person. So it's really important to honor that you're just in a whatever minute span communicating between two people, but that's going to stick with the person who's still here and still living a life.
Which is why I don't like when people are on like TikTok live doing like speed readings for people.
Mm-hmm.
That bothers me for that reason.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I understand it's a great way to build a business and all of that, but if you're going to do readings on live, please spend 5 to 10 minutes doing one.
Mm-hmm.
Do not do quick answers. Do not be like, oh, this, and this, and flippant, because you could just be totally throwing someone else's life onto the train tracks, like without even noticing.
Well, I was at a conference 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks, whatever. I was at a recent conference, and it was, there was a lot more intuitives there. It was more like introducing astrology to an intuitive environment. And they did like this rapid fire gallery reading thing at the banquet. And this one woman that I had known from a previous astrology conference got called out for something. And they gave her this information and then moved on to the next person and did a raffle. And I watched this lady, and she was just sitting there like, you could tell she did not know what to do now. What do I do with this information? You just rocked her world and blew her mind and then moved on to do a raffle like nothing else happened, which to me wasn't
an issue with me. It
was not the most responsible way to handle that. And again, like, shame on that spirit for coming through that way at that time, you know, and being so abrupt as well. But so I went over to them later and I was like, hey, do you want me to pick up on them? Because I was testing my own skills at the same time. And I would tap in and be like, who's going to come through for this person, get some details about them. The medium would also say the thing out loud. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm doing my skills are still sharp, you know? So I went through later and I was like, hey, do you need more on this? Because I can probably pick up on it for you. Because that was insane. So we kind of brought closure. You want to give closure to any loops that you open when you're working with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. And again, like, I've had people be like, if my dad comes through, I don't want to talk to him. Like, okay, like, you know, or whatever. And that's true too. And the spirit, when you're doing mediumship stuff, sometimes the spirit will try to come in and I'll be like, sorry, boundary. They don't want to talk to you. Like, not going to happen. Or I will say, he is here. Are you sure? You know, something like that. And a lot of times they're like, yeah, no, I got closure. I'm done. I don't care if he's better now. He wasn't better here. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And sometimes people will be like, yeah, I'd like to talk to, you know, this person, and the person will come in and the spirit will be really quiet and I'll be like, they're not saying anything. And they're like, oh yeah, because I'm really mad at them and I need to say some stuff to them. And I'm like, okay. So that's the other thing, is it's just a different game, as opposed to talking to guides and getting clarity on stuff and looking at energy fields, or talking to higher selves, or even ghost communication, because ghosts are doing their own thing. They're entirely doing their own thing. They have their own life path. They're here. They stayed behind for whatever reason they decided to. They're doing their own space. And sometimes they might want to say stuff and they want to come through or whatever, but it's a different sort of process. At least for me, it's a very different process, but it's a different process as opposed to chatting with the past loved ones.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any specific questions on mediumship stuff, you can go ahead and ask those under our YouTube. But if you want to ask us a question that we're going to actually answer, like, very much live on the podcast, please join our Patreon, especially the 3rd tier. You can ask us questions, and we have one of those to round out the episode today. So this question, where did it go? I'm just going to pull it up and like read a little bit of it. Okay. So basically this is a question about practices, rituals, and where to start doing those. And if we have any resources that we could talk about, tips, resources, books, websites, creators, or specifically, or potentially specific practices that are great for people to start with. And we both thought this was an awesome question because we know a lot of our listeners, or our watchers, if you're watching us on the YouTube, all of you are, you know, in different stages of your spiritual journey, but a lot of you are kind of just beginning, and that's cool to us. We love giving tips and spaces, kind of for that. So do you have anything that you want to start off talking with on that one?
So here's my thing. And this is going to, I hope, be encouraging and probably a little bit overwhelming, but it does have an anchor at the end. Like any good story, right? So the thing about magic is, and I was in a panel this past week at Astromagia. This came up too, the same question. And I was really excited because I got to hear other people's perspectives on it as well. But we all agreed on this one point. You're already doing it. You are already doing it.
Say.
Every day that you make a choice, that you do something with intention, that you have a feeling, that you sing a song, you are already doing it. So one of the things that I would say to start with is start checking what you're doing in your day and say, does this feel like it's supporting me magically? Is this the food that I want to be a part of my magic? Is this the television show that is supporting my magic? And start cultivating a daily routine, very sixth house, but a daily routine that is magic. And that can be like, I meditate for 10 minutes here. I watch this television show. I journal. That is all, like, literally life and existence are movements and intentions, and intention is magic. If we are in spooky season, so I'm going to quote Halloween Town because I love Halloween Town, the movie. Magic is really very simple. All you have to do is think about something and then let yourself have it. So that is the bare bones magical practice you can already start doing. It is just living your life the way you want to live it, in a way that supports you becoming the person you want to be. And you deserve probably to be more than you're giving yourself credit for if you're seeking right now. So let yourself know who you want to be, create that vision, and start living the lifestyle that leads to that. By the way, hello, manifesting 101, living as though you already have it, right? Yeah. So there's that. If you want to take it further, I would start researching, literally, I'd start with nutrition. And this is because food and herbs and all of the things that you use, you'll also probably get into in a lot of folk magic practices. I would also start looking at the phases of the moon, because I have not run into a folk magic practice yet that doesn't at least incorporate that. So herbs and the phases of the moon seem to be something that is accessible. Looking at your local herbs, responsibly sourced herbs, as you know, of course, you don't want to do white sage if that's already a scarcity and is something that is precious to another practice. You can do those things all the time. And the reason I call it nutrition is because nutrition is herbalism. It's just the herbalism you do for yourself every day. And you can take that to another degree. And like I said, with the lunar phases, I literally just wrote the astrology section for the Brahmarai practitioner's grimoire. And I'm very proud of that. But it's very simple. Just looking at, if the moon is increasing in light, you're going to be increasing or planting something so that it grows. If it's decreasing, you do the things that you want to see decreased in life. So you'd be, working towards releasing things. Full moon towards new moon, we do releasing. New moon towards full moon, you think about manifesting or creating or increasing. That's what's behind those words that don't really have a lot of root in the way we see them on social media.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would also say too, and I've said this on here before, but intention matters more than practice. Like your intention behind a ritual, etc., is going to matter a lot more than doing it exactly perfect or exactly right. The ritual is just to add extra oomph to the intention. Also, you already do way more rituals than you think you do. Have you ever blown out birthday candles? That's a ritual. Have you ever?
Is what I was doing here, by the way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Have you ever, like, if you've spilled salt and thrown it over your shoulder because of superstition, that's a ritual. Like you do so many more rituals than you think that you do. And I always say that, like, remember, there's magic in that. And if you add more intention to your daily rituals, sitting down to eat, and sending intention into your food, that's a form of magic starting out just right. I also want to say too, with especially diving into witchcraft, whatever, there is so many resources out there. There are many, many good books. I recommend start thinking about stuff that you already naturally gravitate towards and then starting reading up on that. So for me, when I was first starting in my spiritual reawakening, for me, it was Hellenismos, because I love ancient stuff. I knew Apollo was one of my guides, and I was like, I guess I gotta look at some ancient Greek stuff. And that felt really good to me. If you're like, oh, I love doing garden work, look at some green witch stuff, look at some, cottage witch style stuff. And that there are books out there. There are websites out there. Just start looking stuff up. Keep in mind, if anyone's like, you have to do this, that is not true. You don't have to do anything. It is not something that's supposed to be restricting. It is something that is open for you to interpret and decide what you would like to incorporate into your life and what you would not like to incorporate into your life. So as far as starting points go in that, dive into places that you would find interest in. Every ritual is not going to, like, Norse rituals are very different than, Norse paganism rituals are very, very different than Wiccan stuff. They just are. So if you're more aligned with like Wiccan style stuff, which is like the honestly which religion is the best way I'm going to describe Wicca, because that's what it is. Awesome. Go read up on that. You can start with the history. You can just start with books that feel good. Or if, you're more aligned with like Norse paganism or, a different folk magic sort of stuff, go do some research on that. Chaos magic is one that I love doing work on because I think it's freaking great. How can we make the rules of the world apply to small things? Like I once talked to someone who put the energy of Moldavite into a Pringle chip and ate it. And that is the most chaos magic thing I've ever freaking heard of. And that's totally fine. So there's so many different areas and facets in that way, but you really want to let your own interest be your guide. The other thing with that too, whether you're reading on websites or books, don't be afraid to change your mind. Like if you're like, oh, I really was interested in this, but everything I read about it doesn't feel a lot. Like every time I get close, dive in deeper, I'm not actually liking this very much. I'm going to try this other branch, or I'm going to, click off of this and return this book to the library and get another one, right? Like that is totally fine. And you're more than welcome to do that. That is perfectly wonderful. You don't have to feel aligned with everything just because you thought you might be aligned with this. The other thing too is ritual and intention and can be put into anything, kind of the same way that Krista was talking about. You can decide that you're going to make a painting and that painting is going to give you energy every day. Awesome. Because you look at it there. Like there's so many elements to that, but it really, spirituality is a self-led journey. And if you don't know where to start, ask your guides. Like genuinely.
Yeah. And also as you're pursuing things, because I know part of the question was about like, how do you find something that is an open practice to you? If you want to pursue a practice, read up on it, understand it. And then the next level is find people who do it. My mentor for astrological magic is also initiated into Sufism and Zen Buddhism and all of these other things. That's not part of his ancestral heritage, but he pursued these things and then found people who said, yeah, come on in, you can be a part of this. So it's always worth saying, hey, is it all right if I join on this? Here's where I'm at, am I welcome here? And let the people decide, let them say, yeah, come on in, or, this is not the time. And then you'll know that that's a not right now, or there's a better path for you kind of situation. And it's just that natural. It doesn't feel like it. And I want to acknowledge this. It doesn't feel like it at the beginning. It feels very inaccessible, very overwhelming, very ungrounded. But as someone who has walked the path since I was literally 10, I have finally found my way into the places that I fit. And that became a lot easier to do when I just started interacting with people and asking the questions and doing the reading and understanding things and gaining my own knowledge. Because one of my favorite things that I've come to this year, I said to one of my mentors, is I finally know enough to have my own opinions when I hear people in conversation. Whereas before it was, they're saying this and I don't know enough to be able to say whether I agree or not. But now that I'm at the place that I'm at, I have my own opinions and I can say, I disagree with this, I agree with this, or I see both of your points and I'm in the middle, which is a nice place to be when you're involved, especially with magic, because intention is a lot of things. And some people will channel their intention towards frustration and not the nicest things. So you want to make sure you're kind of someone who's seeing both sides and keeping it balanced.
Yeah. I would also say, just as like a final thought too, if you're starting out on this journey, don't go into it being scared of, oh, am I supposed to do this? Am I allowed to do this? Whatever. Go into it with the best intentions you can, learn as much as you can about something. And if someone does eventually come along or a culture comes out and says, please don't use this practice anymore, then adjust. It's okay to not know everything right off of the bat and dive into something with the best intentions anyway. That's okay. You can dive into something with that, like, I think I'm allowed to do this, so I'm going to do it until I'm told otherwise. And you can also hold space or ask your guides, be like, hey, I'm going to do this practice because I really feel connected to it and it feels awesome. If I'm not supposed to be doing it, please give me that information. And, you'll find out about that, or you won't, or, it'll be very, very clear. But yeah, make sure that you're setting your intentions and you're just diving into things that interest you, because letting fun and excitement and curiosity lead you is always going to be bringing you closer to alignment, as opposed to letting fear or frustration or, annoyance or even just boredom. Like you want to follow the other path in that space.
Agreed.
And that is our time, which is awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to the show. We have so much fun doing this, and we got a lot of really awesome feedback on our last couple episodes. So thank you for that. We're really happy to be helpful. We have 2 really fun episodes coming up that we have already planned on doing, and we're really excited. So the next 2 episodes are going to be super duper fun, and I'm excited for those big time. And I know Krista is too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's going to be really great.
Yeah. And if you would like our episodes a day early, that is what the Patreon is for. Please check that out. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. And we always hope that after these episodes, you take some time and you
go make some magic. We didn't even do that on my end.
That wasn't good. That wasn't good.
No.
It's okay.
Apologies. We'll get there.